This lightning talk was based on a conversation that I had with Bernard Krabina in Vienna last year, and he says, you know, Rich, this should be a talk. So, I have a hobby. I like to read Hacker News. And if you don't know what Hacker News is, here's a screenshot. The URL is there. You can get addicted to it yourself. Pardon?
Don't do it.
If you want to read the article that I'm going to tell you about, then you would go to You would go to the search for Hacker News and search for the demise of the mildly dynamic website. And you would find a page that looks like this. This is a website maintained by a software engineer from the UK named Hugo Landau. And he's also a technology essayist, and it is his essay on the demise of the mildly dynamic website that caught my attention, and I wanted to tie it into this community. So I'm not going to read all this, so I'm including it for completeness. And I've bolded out some of the things that really jump out at me. So I think Mark was talking about the early days of computing when licenses were being created, and I'm going to take you back to the birth of the HTML web, and people were coding websites by handwritten HTML. And then at some point, people realized that we need a little bit of dynamicity. Dynamicity is the word that means we want these websites to do things and not just be purely static. So around 1998 is the rise of the infamous PHP, and for the uninitiated, that's relevant to this community because MediaWiki at present is developed in PHP, a language that's been around since 1998. So PHP gave rise to the ability to do inline server-side scripting that allowed you to make your static website, your static HTML, a little bit dynamic. You could have it do things. And there's a number of things worth drawing attention to. The main point being that it doesn't consume any resources, it's not spawning processes in the background, so it's very lightweight. And what I really want to draw attention to is this idea of jamming, which in the second paragraph from the bottom is the last word that I've highlighted. So this is Hugo Landau's word. Jamming is the idea of just sort of being a creative web developer. I have an idea and I want to code it up quickly. I want to jam. I want to do some programming jamming. So I think Jeffrey's talk about vibe coding with AI is maybe the modern equivalent of the old school approach to, I have a server, I kind of know what I'm doing, and I want to cobble this thing together and see if I can get it to work. And that's what he kind of talks about as jamming.
I call it the TikTok version.
Okay. And so, you know, he's talking about the joy of having, being able to develop HTML for websites and to start prototyping and spontaneous creativity, and that was all the goodness of the early days of PHP. And that gave rise to what he calls the mildly dynamic website. We're going to talk about what the not mildly dynamic website is here in just a minute. But essentially, these are websites that are still basically a collection of web pages, i.e. a collection of articles. They're not entire web applications, which means they don't have a lot of overhead. They're pages of essentially static information, like wiki articles, and they sometimes do things. And the main point is that this environment encourages the idea of spontaneous, creative dynamicity on the web, and it was fun. And so the problem we have in today's world is what he calls the dynamicity gap. And eventually the era of the PHP websites passes away and it gets replaced by frameworks and really complicated tools that do all of the out-of-the-box website application implementation for you. And as a result of this, there is a demise of the mildly dynamic website. So he says that the mildly dynamic functionality that I mentioned above is too minor to be worth bringing an entire web application framework into existence and spawning and maintaining persistent processes just to serve a simple website. Or to put it another way, and so I have a graph. So the x-axis is the dynamicity, and the y-axis represents the amount of effort required to achieve that dynamicity. Now, the advantage of a modern web application framework is that with a threshold amount of effort, you get a lot of dynamic behavior. But the investment that you have to put in to achieve that dynamicity is a huge investment up front. And so to put this into context, what the PHP framework allows you to do, as you can see in sort of the linear dotted line, is that you can put the amount of effort in for the amount of dynamicity that you want out. So a little bit of dynamicity for a little bit of effort. Whereas if you wanted to do something very, very simple in a modern web framework, you'd have to implement the entire web framework in order to do some simple dynamic hello world. PHP gives you the freedom to do that simplicity. Now, let's tie it back in and make it relevant. So in our world, one of the things that we talk about is the absolute importance of spreadsheets for discussing complex ideas. You'll find spreadsheets in every industry. They are certainly alive and well here at NASA. And what I want to make a connection to in this quick talk is to say that the reason why spreadsheets are so effective is that they functionally provide mild dynamicity to the end user. Anybody can pop open the spreadsheet application, throw some data into the spreadsheet, do some calculations, add some variables in the cells, and suddenly they have some mildly dynamic calculations. And so the magic or the secret to the success of the spreadsheet in today's modern world is the fact that it is mildly dynamic to the end user. The problem, of course, is that it's still a document-based solution, and so these spreadsheets get stored away into file stores, they get emailed around, they're not definitive, and for as wonderful as they are from a creativity and a spontaneous data processing, mildly dynamic way, they're not really good as a single source of truth. So, I will leave you with the message that when you embrace the MediaWiki platform, you get all the goodness of a mildly dynamic website. You get access to PHP to do the spontaneous dynamicity that you may be interested in doing with extension development, or even just inline coding within your wiki article, and all of the goodness of the mildly dynamic experience, with also it gives you all of the goodness of the single source of truth and the persistent data, existing without, worry, all the version control and traceability and all the other features that we talked about earlier today. So that's the end of my quick talk. I hope it was enjoyable. So that was last one of two. Should I just